Hi, here are some official speedrun categories even your grandparents can pull off with decent kiting and exploration skills. These runs are meant to be casual speedruns that don't necessarily use world record strategies, so they are actually pretty fun and easy to replicate and to improve upon if you give them a chance. I also want to give some small insight as to how a speedrunning session usually goes if you are not being too competitive about it. For this reason, I will provide the amount of resets I have done and mention what my reset conditions were for each one. Even though a casual speedrun aims to keep the amount of resets to a minimum, setting yourself some reset conditions will greatly help you overcome the repetitive, demotivating, or boring aspects you might associate with a specific run. With that being said, let's get to the actual gaming now. A casual Ancient Guardian speedrun has probably the simplest route on this list. It has the single objective of locating the labyrinth and killing the giant minotaur as soon as possible, but there's also a little more to the whole thing. Navigating through the entrance of the ruins can be extremely time consuming if you are there during the nightmare phase or while you are insane, so avoiding unnecessary danger is the #1 priority here. For this run, I did a total of 4 resets until I got this road. I had 2 reset conditions: arriving at the ruins entrance a little too late, and getting a bad ruins generation that would involve pointless walking for entire minutes. Thanks to the minimal setup this run encourages, I was quickly able to find a world I was satisfied with. To minimize our preparation time and to keep our sanity as high as possible while exploring in the caves, we collected materials for a pickaxe to open up a sinkhole, 4 axes to use as potential weapons, and 4 torches to use as a continuous light source. 4 torches might sound like an overkill, but we really don't want to go insane while fighting the Ancient Guardian. After entering the caves and finding the muddy biome, we started looking for clues to find out the direction the ruins are in. If you are looking for a good introduction to finding where the ruins are, I recommend this video from Carrion, which you can find in the description. But let's get back to the run now. It looks like the part of the muddy biome we have entered has blue and red mushroom forests and a third biome connected, with the swamp nearby. This tells us that the opposite direction is more likely to have enough space to generate the ruins, so we explore there. We find Hutch on the opposite side, so we are almost certain that the ruins are going to be orthogonal to the exit of Hutch's bridge. Even if they are not, we should feel confident in leaving the large unexplored part of the muddy biome as the last place to check. That's probably where the rest of the biomes are going to connect to. Exploring the right side of Hutch's bridge reveals some guano turf, meaning that we are technically still in the same part of the muddy biome. So we check the left side and immediately locate a monkey village. This isn't too unusual, but it also hints towards a falsely connected branch. So we search for the lichen field to find out where we should be heading towards. We then find the lichen field very quickly. At a clickable distance, we see another exit out of here. We click there such that our character performs dark magic to pathfind towards that direction. Finding blue mushrooms on the way tells us that as long as everything else in the ruins has connected successfully, we are heading towards the right direction. At this point, the only thing we will have to worry about is finding where the labyrinth is, while keeping ourselves away from danger as much as possible. We managed to arrive at the labyrinth with only a single monkey and 3 nightmare creatures chasing us, which is quite fine. After taking care of them and looting some armor and weapon upgrades from the ornate chests, we fight and kill the Ancient Guardian. I would rate the difficulty of a casual Ancient Guardian speedrun 3 Wilsons out of 10. The fight is not really hard even with minimal gear, and the main challenge is actually staying out of trouble as reasonably as possible. The only hard part of this category is good map reading skills being essential for a pleasant gaming experience and a smooth run. Sanity will become an issue the longer the run takes, and there's nothing much you can do aside from finding the labyrinth as soon as possible. Despite its intimidating health pool, I find Dragonfly to be the most casual boss on this list. This is because it rewards an additional preparation phase that's also extremely convenient to fit into a very straightforward route. Find a pamphlet, raid and profit from Peking's village, and search for the desert. Of course, this is easier said than done, but finding a world that fits into this game plan is actually way more common than you would assume. The run I'm showing here took me 6 resets, and I was specifically looking for a world where I would be able to finish the fight on day 2. Otherwise, my only reset condition would be not finding the Dragonfly desert before I get bored, because most of the time, locating Peking is going to be the easier part of the run. I think this is also a good time to mention the importance of practice worlds. A practice world is a world where you create your own custom setup for a boss fight using creative mode and console commands. You might also want to manually save a couple of times to be able to roll back your game to just before the start of the fight. A Dragonfly fight with walls is not the hardest fight out there, but it still requires some practice beforehand to turn it from a fight with disastrous consequences after a single mistake into an interesting fight that doesn't even punish a few oopsies. But most importantly, being familiar with a fight before starting a run will greatly reduce the amount of attempts you will need to succeed in that run, preventing you from unnecessarily losing motivation and teaching you how to best manage your resources. This is why I strongly recommend creating a practice world before attempting a run. It will save you a lot of time and resources both in the game and in the real life. After spawning in, we start by gathering the materials for a torch, a hammer, additional 4 rocks, and the grass needed for the ropes of our football helmets. We are not concerned about the logs for the science machine and the twigs for the handbat, because we will be hammering down cat contents for them, and as for everything else, we will be hammering down pig houses and killing catcoons. Conveniently enough, a wormhole takes us straight to the Dragonfly desert. I usually avoid jumping through wormholes before I get the most grass I need for my next objective, since unlike twigs, grass is not really abundant everywhere on the map. This is also why I don't like turning the caves off, even if the run can be completed using the overworld only. Sometimes the caves can be a good way of getting some emergency grass or flint. After looking at the map and realizing how far away the desert is from the spawn, we decide to check out the adjacent biome. It is common for Peking Forest or another biome connecting to the Peking Forest to be the next biome in this scenario. For those curious about the actual odds, you can find a document in the description that contains the chances of biomes connecting to each other. A huge thanks to Arcval for taking their time to gather this data, and a big shout out to Gia for making it publicly accessible. We hit the 1 in 6 roll and end up finding Peking immediately. However, Bloomer's statue apparently decided to play hide and seek with us. After searching through almost every corner of the rope that connects to Peking, we find the pamphlet and head straight for the Dragonfly. After finding a lava pool that's far enough from the other ones, we place down our alchemy engine and start building our setup. The relocation strategy we are using here is sadly outdated as of the most recent update. Dragonfly used to reset her home location whenever she was slapped or frozen, which is no longer the case. Since she chose the lava ponds to spawn her lava at in relation to her home position, we were able to make her spam the lava at a single pond with a well-calculated pamphlet cast, or we could even make her spam all the lava away from lava ponds by dragging her far enough. However, the good old strategy of placing 2 strips of walls near a single lava pond should still work just as well. The main advantage of relocating Dragonfly and creating a box like this was to gain free hits while Dragonfly was summoning her lava. So the 2 strips of walls setup is only missing out on a negligible amount of free hits that makes the fight only slightly longer. Overall, I would rate the difficulty of a casual Dragonfly speedrun 4 Wilsons out of 10. It requires a negligible amount of knowledge on world generation if you want to make things easier for yourself. And even though the fight highly demands being familiar with it, it is a rather forgiving one with the pamphlet and the walls setup. Digging up some blue mushrooms is always an option if you are worried about tanking too much damage, but the more confident you get with the fight, the less you will start relying on extra safety measures. An Antlion speedrun is an example where changing the world settings is required. In this case, we must set our starting season to summer. The main challenge of this run is not the season, however, it's the fight itself aiming a high pace. So I want to remind you the importance of practice worlds once more. They will save you from lots of headaches, especially in this run. Just like the Dragonfly fight though, this fight rewards some additional preparation, because of the need to craft an alchemy engine for a thermal stone. Once again, the route for this run is pretty straightforward. The first step is finding the rocks and flint for a thermal stone. The next step is gathering the materials for a watering can and an alchemy engine, ideally from hammering down pickhouses. The last step is then finding the Antlion and defeating it. I must admit that I got a lucky world generation in this run, and it took me only 2 resets to find this world. The only reason I decided to regenerate the other worlds was because I wasn't able to find the Oasis Desert before day 3 started, which was the limit I have set for myself. I also have spent more time practicing the Antlion fight compared to actually grinding for my attempts, which paid off really well in the end. We start the run by collecting the grass for a torch, a hammer, and some ropes, along with the twigs and flint required for 2 pickaxes. We don't know how long we will need to explore both before and after we place down our alchemy engine, so we decide to craft 2 thermal stones instead of 1 and to pick up a petal in case we need a whirly fan to cool down. We find a wormhole and decide to test our luck with it, but sadly it takes us to the middle of nowhere. We then jump back and go to the mosaic biome while collecting the remaining grass we will be needing. After an extensive mining session, we get all the rocks and flint required for 2 thermal stones and enough gold for building 2 alchemy engines. Since we see a cobble road in the middle of the meteor field, we know that we will find a picking soon, which means that we will not be needing to craft a whirly fan and will instead hammer down our alchemy engine after crafting the thermals. After hammering down some pickhouses and a catcoon den, a desert tile in the corner catches our eye, which turns out to be the Oasis Desert. We rush back to find another catcoon den to hammer down and to get the hambat materials. We then prototype an alchemy engine and a watering can and fill the watering can immediately. Since the desert is nearby, we won't bother with placing down the alchemy engine just yet. But sadly, finding the Antlion takes a little longer than we expect, and we start to overheat, so we end up placing down the first alchemy engine anyways to craft our thermal stones. We light a cactus on fire, drop the thermal stones next to it, and hold down the right click button with the watering can equipped to cool down the thermal stones. Funnily enough, the moment we hammer down our alchemy engine and walk a few more steps, we find Antlion. We place down another alchemy engine and give one of the thermal stones to Antlion to start the fight. We craft our hambat in the meantime and start hitting Antlion afterwards. Whenever possible, we prioritize destroying the sand spikes that might block us and attack Antlion once they go down. We end up killing Antlion the moment it manages to almost fully trap us. The Antlion fight has a very high pace, so I would rate the difficulty of a casual Antlion speedrun 5 Wilsons out of 10. I think that the only big challenge of this run is the fight itself though, because the random nature of the Oasis Desert makes map reading skills a lot less relevant. One thing I can suggest is that if you are not too confident with fighting Antlion, consider bringing a marble suit as well, and even experiment with some occasional tanking if you feel like it. Night Only Eye of Terror is another category where we are required to change the world settings. In my case, I'm using the Lights Out preset, but you can also manually set the world to be night only and enable starting resources instead. The route of a casual Eye of Terror speedrun has, in my opinion, two alternatives. One involving tier 1 signs on the pamphlet and the other relying on tier 2 signs only. Because of this, the amount of resets required for the run might vary. I decided to stick with the first route, as I enjoy relying on less resources and a moderate amount of luck. It took me around 10 resets to get the world I was looking for, which was unfortunate, but still negligible. My reset conditions were not finding the terrarium chest or the Glomar statue within the first day. As for the other route, I would set my reset conditions to not being able to find the mosaic biome in 2 or 3 minutes, and again, not being able to find the terrarium chest within the first day. In that route, we would go to the mosaic biome to mine some gold boulders for 4 gold and 13 rugs, kill a tall bird or 2 otters for 2 large meat, hammer down the starting resources chest on our way back for 2 boards, hammer down a pickhouse and prototype an alchemy engine, and lastly, craft a helmet and a football helmet right after finding and activating the terrarium. In this route though, we start by chopping down a single small tree and mine 2 boulders to get materials for a science machine and 2 spears. We then follow the cobble road and hope to find Picking's forest. That turns out to be the case, so we get the pamphlet from Glomar's statue and head back to the mandrake forest that we just walked by. Since I'm not really sure if a second Peck village guarantees the terrarium chest nearby, we decide to be extra safe and explore the mandrake forest a little, but the terrarium chest doesn't seem to be there. To regain some sanity, we prototype a spear. Afterwards, we jump through a wormhole, hoping that it brings us closer to the second Peck village, but it ends up being too far away. After jumping back and following the cobble road in the other direction, we locate the terrarium chest and activate the terrarium on the cobble road, a little further than the spider dance. We quickly pick up some petals to regain some sanity and we craft our second spear. Once the Eye of Terror spawns, we start fighting it without resorting to the pamphlet first, and kill all of its minions in between. Once the minions and the nearby spiders start to overwhelm us, we start using the pamphlet to gain some free hits, and to give ourselves the opportunity to kill the minions. Eye of Terror goes down with 3 uses on the pamphlet left to spare. I think it's fair to rate the difficulty of a casual night-only Eye of Terror speedrun lower than the rest, so I will give it 2 Wilsons out of 10. The main challenge of the whole run is locating the terrarium chest, which is only rare in the Moonstone Forest. The fight itself is really simple, and the boss has a relatively small health pool. I still don't think this run is as casual as the Dragonfly run because of Lights Out mode, but if you are looking for a run with unique settings, then I can highly recommend giving Night Only Eye of Terror a shot. Last on the list of my casual speedruns is Pearl. While a Pearl speedrun might sound too tedious at first, I think that the change of pace the run offers is refreshing enough to consider it on this list. A Pearl speedrun has many smaller objectives, but the overall route is simple enough to explain in a few steps. The world I got for this run took me 2 resets in total, and I had only 2 reset conditions. The first one is sailing around for too long without finding anything, especially the cookie cutters. The second one is the first autumn rain happening before I finish collecting all the Pearl task materials, except for the cookie cutter shells. Our route consists of 4 stages, and while we are utilizing Wilson's transmutation perks to save time on finding moon rocks, the other characters can pay a quick visit to the archives instead. The first stage is gathering as many grass, boards and custone as reasonably possible, looking for a good cave entrance and collecting the common Pearl task materials. The second stage is crafting an alchemy engine in case we will need to manually craft the carpet turf, and going down into the caves to grab the replica chair blueprint. We can also pre-craft a campfire and grab some green mushrooms for faster center management. Finding Chester and getting the pamphlet from Glomer's statue both give us an advantage in this stage of the run, but they are not strictly necessary. The third stage is ocean exploration and getting the remaining materials on the way. If we are lacking the carpeted turf, we can use buffalo wool and boards to craft some. And if we haven't found a message bottle until now, we will want to simply YOLO our way into the ocean and hope to find one while looking for cookie cutters. Message bottles will attempt to spawn around sailing players, but this is a rather unreliable way of getting them. Otters also have a small chance to drop one when they die. The fourth stage is completing all the possible pearl tasks while waiting for the first autumn rain. If we still haven't located any cookie cutters in the third stage of the road, we can delay that search to this stage. We can also trap the Krabby Hermit after completing the wooden chair task, so we won't have to wait around during dusk and nighttime to get the pearl. We could as well kidnap the Krabby Hermit by placing the wooden chair on our boat if we are too concerned about missing the rain task. We just have to make sure to not sink the boat in that case. An important thing to point out is that the Krabby Hermit starts bugging if we give her heavy fish during dusk or nighttime, excluding some specific circumstances. If we want her to successfully register our caught fish, it will be the best to wait until the next day starts. Because I don't like dealing with this, I'm simply using another glitch that lets me skip one pearl task. However, I will consider catching some fish if I miss the first autumn rain. Overall, this route allows us to get the pearl from the Krabby Hermit very consistently before the first full moon. Even after struggling to find a message bottle and the cookie cutters, we managed to complete the run on the dusk of day 8. Considering that the early stages of the run require quite a bit of exploration and resource gathering, I would rate the difficulty of a casual pearl speedrun 5 Wilsons out of 10. Each stage is actually quite easy to follow. However, the main difficulty of the run is improving your time on each of these stages separately. World generation also plays a big role in pearl speedruns for deciding how smoothly your plans will go, so finding ways to overcome the randomness is another fun challenge in itself. I hope that I was able to share enough details to show that speedrunning doesn't have to be a time-consuming or a hard-to-get-into hobby. Even though the routes I used for this video were by no means world record standards, I still find them to be fun and simple enough for a casual gaming experience. I highly encourage you to try out one of these runs and see it for yourself, and to even submit your run if you like the way you pulled it off. A good speedrun is not necessarily a world record run. It is one where the attempt is genuine and fun to watch. If you have any questions or if you are just interested in talking about speedrunning, feel free to join our Discord server. There, you will always find someone that is happy to chat with you or to help you out with anything you might be struggling with. Take care and bye.